I have my own theories about how this came to be. Maybe you did some research. I did absolutely no research.
Yes.
I can put forth my theory if you want.
And you want me to tell you if you're correct or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this movie was produced by J.J. Abrams, his company Bad Robot. So it was, unless they retroactively said we produced it after they picked up some movie, but so maybe they did set forth to make a third film in the Cloverfield anthology. They made it. They test screened it. Everyone said it was terrible. And they said, what do we do? How about this scam where we release it on the same day as the Super Bowl? I mean, the big game. And we'll save a whole bunch of money on marketing costs because we won't do any marketing. People will think, hey, I'll watch this. Yeah. We'll sell it to Netflix for $1 over what we cost to make it so we can write it off as a profit.
Yeah.
And move on with our lives. Am I anywhere close to being correct?
Not exactly. It wasn't shot as a Cloverfield movie, much like 10 Cloverfield Lane. It was its own thing, and then it was, what I think happened is they realized that they had a big turd on their hands, so they said, let's shoot a couple more scenes, which they did, to connect it to the Cloverfield universe.
Well, the big monster at the end didn't feel tacked on, so
that felt completely. Yeah.
I find this hard to believe.
Well, I don't think they even say it's because the ship is called the Cloverfield, but I think that's just in you hear voices say it, like off-camera voices. So there's a couple pickup shots here and there. The ending is reshot. So I think what they said was, okay, we have this movie, it's subpar. We'll make it a Cloverfield movie. And we'll dump it on Netflix. We'll have an ad on the Super Bowl to make it feel like it's this interesting new marketing technique as an event, which I fell for because we've talked recently about our hope for the death of theaters. And this played into that, where it's like, hey, there's a new movie in this franchise. Here it is. But yeah, it turns out to be a scam.
This doesn't help.
No, this has killed any interest in, one, the Cloverfield series, but also... it almost feels like the phrase dumped on Netflix is becoming a thing.
Yes.
It's like in the 90s when there was direct-to-video had like a negative stigma, even though I loved a lot of direct-to-video stuff, but they were all like lower budget crap movies, They're not your Ninja Turtle franchise or your Star Wars. It's just cheap direct-to-video. It's the Puppet Master series. So I think direct-to-Netflix has potential to become the new direct-to-video.
Everything's on kind of, it's like a toddler learning how to walk, right? You have Amazon Studios producing films.
Good movies
that are in theaters on Amazon.
Manchester by the Sea was Amazon.
Amazon has a lot of quality films, and Netflix even. I mean, like you have the Bright situation, which was like this big thing because of how big the budget was, and then it comes out and it's like it gets terrible reviews, but then it's like the highest grossing Netflix viewed thing ever, and it's like what's happening? But Netflix they're on thin ice with their content, with their original content.
Yeah, well, it's like Gerald's Game is one of my favorite movies of last year, and that was direct to Netflix. And then 1922, which is another Stephen King adaptation. That's a fantastic movie made for Netflix.
Let me correct that as their feature film department.
Okay,
not the made for Netflix.
Well, they're series. Yeah, there's some good
different,
series, but then there's also like, I don't know, the Fuller House, or they
Well,
produce the
sure.
Adam Sandler movies. They seem to be catering to, like, is there an audience for this? Boom, we'll plug it in and we'll make it.
Yeah.
So they've made some excellent feature films. I have not seen The Open House. Did you see that one?
Okay, yeah. I wanted to bring up two horror movies. That The Open House was god awful. It was dull and dry, and then it had the stupidest ending I've ever seen in my life, where it was a non-ending. It was a whodunit, but at the end they don't tell you who done it, and then it just ends, and it was awful. And then I watched another film called Before I Wake, and it was like it had this spooky little kid on the cover, Jacob Tremblay.
Jacob Tremblay. He somehow de-aged 3 years.
Yeah, the star of the room. His acting is bad in this.
Oh.
And
See, and that's the same director as Gerald's Game, which is a fantastic movie, and I like some of his other movies, so I don't know what happened with this one, but I know it sat on a shelf for a couple years, and then they're like, I'll just sell it to Netflix.
Yeah, like you said, dumping ground, and it's like Jacob Tremblay, star of The Room. I mean, The Room was a great film, and Room. Star of Room.
I was going to avoid correcting you because I wanted to keep having the Room poster pop up.
Yeah.
I'm still
I
going to do
caught
it.
myself. He does good in that movie, but then there's this this piece of shit movie that was on a shelf, and then they trick you. It's everything's you just trick them, like you said recently.
Just trick them.
So it's a circus that came to town and took your money and left town. I don't know what else to say. Netflix, you gotta step up your game.
Well, Martin Scorsese's next movie is being made for Netflix. Like the greatest living filmmaker. So we got that to look forward to. Of course, he's dredging up the corpses of like Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. So
What is he making?
I don't. The Irishman, it's called. I don't know anything about it.
A mobster thing?
I don't know. Grumpy old mobsters. That's what it'll be called. Al Pacino's in it too, I think.
I'd watch that.
Yeah, grumpy old mobsters.
I'd watch that.
I would say up until the last couple months, I was really optimistic about Netflix and where they were going with the movies that they were making. And then like Bright and this, it's like, ugh.
It's like cutting your heroin with like sawdust. You know what I mean? You want good stuff. You want the high quality heroin.
Yeah.
And you get tricked.
I'm surprised that Winchester movie wasn't direct to Netflix. That somehow got a theatrical release.
Well, that's the thing too. Is that should have been direct to Netflix. They could have sold that Winchester movie to Netflix, and it wouldn't have gotten 13% Rotten Tomato score. That's the harbinger of doom. The good thing about streaming is you could turn something on, watch it for 10 minutes, and shut it off if you don't like it, as opposed to going and paying in a theater.
Well, one positive of this Cloverfield paradox. What's it called? Cloverfield paradox. I was watching it late at night, and I got so fucking bored I fell asleep. But then I could just wake up the next morning and finish it. If I had fallen asleep in the theater, I would have had to buy another goddamn ticket.
Yeah, that's right. The police would have taken you out of the Sir, you can't sleep here.
So it's good that the value of movies is going down.
Yeah.
Who knows where it's going to go?
It's a very complicated model right now that we're dealing with. And not just Netflix, but the theater system. As long as there are writers out there writing quality scripts, we'll be okay, but there are not.